Hello, and thank you all for tuning in today for our discussion about the new expanded child tax credit. I'm so happy to be joined today by some great guests who will speak to the impacts of this new expansion that we passed in the American Rescue Plan and the impacts it will have on Virginia 10 families. Today we have with us Christina Hagan, who's the Virginia Campaign Director for Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy, Emily Griffey, the Chief Policy Officer for Voices for Virginia's Children, Heather Beardsley, a Virginia 10 parent of a sixth grader and a kindergartner, and the president of the Hamilton PTA, and Elizabeth Coppage, a preschool teacher and a mom of two high schoolers and a third grader. This program is a historic tax cut for working families. It will help families pay for childcare, groceries, diapers, clothes, and so much more. What the new expanded child tax credit means to Virginia families. The value of the credit increased from $2,000 per child to $3,000 or $3,600 for kids under 6. It raised the eligibility age to include 17-year-olds, and it's now advanceable in monthly payments. That means that beginning next week, eligible families will begin seeing monthly payments of up to $250 or $300 in their bank accounts. Monthly payments will continue through the end of the year, then the remaining credit amount will be included in the next year's tax returns. You can find out all kinds of information about advanced CTC payments at irs.gov, including checking your eligibility, submitting your info if you didn't file taxes in 2019 or 2020, and you can opt out of the monthly payments as well if you wish to. Most eligible families don't need to take any action if you filed a tax return in 2019 or 2020 and claimed the child tax credit, or if you entered your info into an IRS non-filer tool to claim your stimulus checks earlier during the pandemic. The expanded child tax credit is one of the most transformational programs passed as a part of the American Rescue Plan. It is estimated that we will cut child poverty in the US by half. That's pretty incredible. And here in Virginia 10, yeah, that deserves a round of applause. And here in Virginia 10, almost 136,000 children are expected to benefit from the expanded child tax credit. That's more than 60% of kids in our district. It will lift more than 7,300 children in our district out of poverty. As many families are still struggling financially as we recover from the COVID crisis, these monthly payments are a lifeline that will ensure that we build back from this pandemic in a full and equitable way. The expanded tax credit will help enable parents get back to work and put our local economy on a path to a strong rebound. And I'm fighting to make this expanded CTC permanent to help uplift working families on a path to success and financial security. Through this historic tax break for working families and our ongoing work to invest in childcare, paid leave, and more through President Biden's American Families Plan, we're building a family-centered recovery from this COVID crisis. I'd like to toss it to our panelists now to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what the expanded child tax credit means to their families and their work. Elizabeth, let's start with you.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Coppage, and like Congresswoman Oxen said, I have 3 children, 2 high schoolers and an elementary schooler, and we're in the middle of heading into 12th and 11th grade, and that means college, looking at colleges, and this child tax credit is imperative. We're looking at which programs we want to sign our kids up for, what's going to look good on resumes, and we just had to pay $100 for a marching band fee and those sorts of things. And my 8-year-old wants to take an art camp. Well, we have to choose which can she do. But now with this child tax credit coming in, it's really going to help us out. We can do both. Our children can have opportunities that they wouldn't have normally had. And it's going to help us, long term. As a preschool teacher, I'm so thankful for this child tax credit, especially the increase in the age of under 6. I work at Kids Under Construction Preschool, and the 3-day 3 program that we have is $350 a month. So that would take the tuition down to $50 a month. And I think, as we all know, preschool is so essential for education, emotional, social advancement. And so I think that this child tax credit is just essential.
Absolutely. It will be hugely beneficial to kids, and it will help them with readiness, and what they learn as in preschool is something that pays dividends for many years to come. And I get it about the band fees because I am also a band parent. So I know exactly what you're talking about. This extra money will come in handy. Great. Heather, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what the CTC will mean to you and your families?
I agree with the additional bills coming in. My rising kindergartner has been in preschool for the last few years. I also have another younger daughter, also still in preschool for 2 more years. And that really it really helps us feel more comfortable, not so strapped, not so stressed. It's just one less worry.
Absolutely, and I think it really helps people to have this tax credit, month to month instead of just having it all at the end of the year, and being able to plan and add it to your monthly budget. I think makes a huge difference for so many families.
I would agree with that.
One of the things, and Heather and Elizabeth, you both live in Loudoun County, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But one of the things I've been hearing for many years is Loudoun County, everybody's rich in Loudoun County. You don't need this. You don't need this money. But as you know, it's also very expensive to live here in Northern Virginia. So, a lot of families are living paycheck to paycheck, and it's very expensive to live here. So I think that this will come in really handy for a lot of families. Wonderful. Thank you. Emily, tell us a little bit about what Voices for Virginia's Children and what this will mean for your families.
Yeah. Well, Voices for Virginia's Children is a multi-issue advocacy organization. We've been around for more than 20 years, and we believe that every child should have equitable access to resources, services, and opportunities to thrive. So for us, it really is about closing the systemic gaps that fail children and prioritizing racial justice, and to ensure that every child has a voice in shaping their future. So for something like the child tax credit, to us really is beneficial when it can be used as an equitable policy that is targeted to greatly impact families that are experiencing the greatest economic hardship. And that's often families of color and immigrant families in Virginia. So we're excited to see something that is so targeted to really helping families be lifted out of poverty and provide that economic security and stability for families. We are also home to the Kids Count Data Center in Virginia, which tracks indicators of child well-being, and we look at the rate of childhood poverty every year. And unfortunately, we have very little to say about it, often because it hasn't changed for a very long time. We've been at a very stagnant rate of childhood poverty, and children that are living in economically disadvantaged families, which we count at 200% of poverty, are 1 in every 3 kids in Virginia. So we know that the struggle is real for many families. And that it's big ideas like this, providing the refundable tax credit, the monthly payments, they're going to help families find the stability and the change in their lives to move forward to economic mobility as well.
I'm sorry, that's me. I went on and I was muted. Nobody told me I was muted. I know, that was the oldest trick in the book. I was trying to keep my dogs from barking, so I had my mute on. Christina, you work for the Campaign for Friendly Economy. The child tax credit sounds like a very family-friendly policy. Can you talk a little bit about how it will impact families in Virginia and what your thoughts are on this new expanded tax credit?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative, for this opportunity to say a few words and share really what the impact is going to be for Virginia families. And so, my name is Christina Hagan. I'm the Virginia State Director for the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy here in Virginia. We are an advocacy organization that pushes for economic policies that lift Virginia women and families. And so, we do a lot of advocacy around paid family medical medical leave, around expanding access to quality, affordable childcare. And as many of the, as you know, Elizabeth and Heather and Emily have already said, I mean, this child tax credit is a game changer for families across our Commonwealth. And so I definitely want to just take a quick moment to say thank you to you, Representative Wexton, for all your advocacy over the years for Virginia families. Fun fact, the Congresswoman and I have been working together since 2015 on a lot of these issues. And so I'm just really excited to be able to say directly to you, thank you for everything that you've been doing for Virginia families. I also would love to just share a quick story, if it's okay, of one of your constituents who I know is going to be personally really positively impacted by the child tax credit. Estefania, who wanted to join us today, but unfortunately her work schedule was kind of in conflicting. But she's a married mother of 3 young children in Prince William County. Her youngest child was born on December 30, 2019, so right before the pandemic hit. And as a mental health therapist at a residential facility for teenagers, she was considered a frontline worker through the pandemic, and didn't have the option to telework. But that being said, with a newborn at home and without access to paid leave, she decided she had to do what she had to do for her family, and just kind of took herself out of the workforce there for a little while. And as a result, her husband was struggling to find work as well. He was a wedding photographer, and of course, weddings were on hold all through the pandemic. And so it just the impact on their household income was dramatic. And so they find themselves in a position now where they've fallen behind on bills. And so this opportunity to add to their household income and provide for their children is just huge, just really, really huge. I mean, the cost, I have an 18-month-old myself, and I had no idea how expensive they were. But all that to say, I mean, this opportunity for Virginia families is huge. And so thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for working as tirelessly as you have for Virginia families, all since your time in the Virginia Senate. And we're excited to be part of this push to expand support for working families, and look forward to what's on the horizon too, with you mentioned the American Families Plan. So
thank you, Christina. And they're so small, but they're so expensive at that age. Yeah, it's just crazy. You don't realize that until you have them. But that's great. Thanks for sharing that story. And it's interesting that you mentioned childcare, because childcare is really top of mind for so many families here in Virginia 10. And it's super expensive, and a lot of one of the things that we talk about in the COVID time of COVID is how it's created a she session, how so many moms have had to leave the workforce in order to stay home with their kids and take care of them, and also assist with the virtual schooling and everything. How would the expanded child tax credit help get more women back in the workforce? Christina or Emily, can you speak to that?
I'll take a first go. I mean, I know it's we hear a lot right now about the lack of access to affordable childcare, and in fact, Voices for Virginia's Children and the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy have joined a statewide coalition called the Virginia Promise Partnership that looks at ways that we can tackle the childcare crisis in state. And I know for a fact that this child tax credit is going to go a long way towards making sure that that working families who are having a hard time finding themselves being able to afford access to quality, affordable childcare, it's going to go a long way towards helping with that. I know there are other challenges that face the childcare crisis. There are childcare deserts in Virginia. There are provider side issues, but certainly from a family budgeting standpoint, it's going to take a huge weight off of these household budgets to make sure that families are able to afford quality care. Emily, I don't know if you want to add to that too.
I'll just add, what we really want is for families to be able to maximize the most amount of benefits from the American Rescue Plan. And the state has extended eligibility for child care assistance to families earning higher incomes if their child is at target age under 5 or not in school. The eligibility was just expanded till the end of this year. So we're really encouraging families, if they want to apply for child care assistance, if their provider is already part of the child care assistance program, to go ahead and put in that application through Common Help in Virginia to get that child care assistance as well. So we want to make sure that the families are getting the biggest possible amount of benefits that they can. The American Rescue Plan was very thoughtful in providing benefits that were for childcare, for food access, for housing access, and we realize that it really does take that full picture in order to make the stable family budget. So the child tax credit in particular is then helping to fill in the gaps where you aren't able to get other specific assistance as well, and can help with those things like school supplies, band fees, the after school program, the summer camp that might not participate, a enrichment thing that your child could do, some normalcy after the pandemic. We all deserve a chance at a vacation and some time just to enjoy being a family together. So I feel like families could also benefit from just having the flexibility of the child tax credit as well.
Yeah, wouldn't a vacation be nice? Yeah, that would be great. Wonderful. Heather and Elizabeth, you guys are very involved in the school communities, and this has been a rough year with all the virtual schooling and everything. Can you elaborate a little bit on how the child tax, and I guess that there's some real issues living in a high cost area and impacting student readiness and challenges that they're facing. What are some of the challenges that you've seen with the families that you serve and that go to your schools and that are involved in the school community? Heather, let's start with you.
I noticed that a lot of the families participated in the meals during the school closures when we were solely virtual, and into after when it was a hybrid. They continued to offer the meals for all students, virtual or hybrid, which I think was a big help. I did not realize how much a 5th grader could eat until I had to feed her 3 meals a day. So we took daily walks up to the school, and luckily we do live close enough that we can just walk on over, get a little outside air, and but I know there were many families that did benefit from that, and they had bus stops for families that couldn't make it to the physical school. That was a big help.
That's definitely one of the things I heard from a lot of different stakeholders about how beneficial it was to kids in the schools. And that's not just at the elementary level, it's also in the middle and high schools that it was hugely beneficial. And also taking away the stigma of the kids, because everybody was eligible and they fed, if any child came and wanted food, they would feed them. So it took away the stigma, of the kids having to prove that they were without means and everything. So it really, really helped.
And good news, it's going to be in place for the next school year as well. Everyone will be eligible for free meals.
That'll make a big, big difference for so many kids.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, what have you seen in terms of student readiness and everything with kids? I know you talked a little bit about preschool. What are some of the ways that the expanded tax credit can really help families to make sure their kids are ready to start kindergarten?
Well, first, I'm really hoping that this will allow a lot more kids to attend preschool and get involved with this. The past year, our preschool had to close until March. And luckily, myself and another teacher were able to teach preschool virtually through the entire school year. But it was 2 hours a week for an hour at a time. And we worked our darndest. And we worked with those 10 to 14 kids we each had in our classes But there's no substitute for that in-person learning to get that social and emotional development. And so many kids missed out on that last year that I'm really hoping that this child tax credit will really make it possible for more kids to attend preschool and to get into a classroom and get that social and emotional learning, as well as the education that was missed this last year. I think that will really help. I'm all for universal pre-K. And I know we're not there yet, but this tax credit will certainly help get more kids into school. And I also know that since our preschool was closed until March, a lot of the teachers weren't working, and so they were home with their kids, and so that took a toll on teachers not having salaries. And so I think that the tax credit's really going to help, because like I said before, even our teenagers have the band fees that come up, senior picture studio sitting fees, all of these different fees that come up that in regards to education that we all need to pay, that we have all kind of in certain ways taken a hit in this past year and a half. So I'm really hoping that it helps, and especially gets more kids into a good preschool program.
Yep. I think at both ends of the spectrum is something where, those expenses are so important. And especially with the kids getting into preschool, I guess, we've all heard that up to a certain age, I guess maybe it's second grade, kids learn to read. And then after that, they read to learn. So if they're behind the curve as they come in kindergarten, then it's really, really hard to make up that learning loss. So getting them all that, as well as the socialization, is so important, especially because so many kids have lost so much over the past year. So I think it's really important that we make up the ground that we lost and do it in a way that's really equitable. So we talked a little bit about the unmet needs for school-age children. And what, with all the unmet needs that there are, what are some of the unmet needs that really concern you guys most? And as far as those unmet needs are concerned, if they were met, what benefit would that have for the greater society, do you think? Christine, I know that's kind of a big question, but let's start with you and say, what do you think from your standpoint in the family-friendly economy?
For sure. And I mean, especially and I know there are still, different packages making their way through at the federal level as well. And, I think we've seen a lot of how that relationship between, frankly, you said yourself, just the number of women who've fallen out of the workforce. And when we talk about trying to get women back to work, how do we build back better? How do we reopen in a way that has economic support in place for our working families, for our kids? And so, obviously paid family medical leave, again, is something that we play a big role in advocating for, and is a big part of that. But also kind of making sure that there is, I know there's a lot of work happening right now to make the child tax credit permanent, which obviously would be a huge win also for Virginia families. But again, I mentioned a little bit at the beginning, there are structural elements to childcare that need to be addressed as well. And whether that's kind of a state-by-state solution, I know that there is money in the American Rescue Plan coming to Virginia specifically to address some of those structural childcare needs. And I know that with our special session coming up just a few weeks away here at the state level, there are going to be some good conversations on how that funding is allocated. But, making sure that not only every family can afford quality childcare, but has access to quality affordable childcare. And I think that there are pockets of the Commonwealth that are not as well served, that don't necessarily have the same structure and infrastructure in place. But then there are also areas where there just aren't enough opportunities. I'll tell you right now, we have been trying to get my son in daycare down here in Richmond, and the waiting list everywhere as long as my arm. And so there is a lack of supply right now as well on that side. And so again, the child tax credit is awesome because it helps with these family budgets. But on the flip side, there's also kind of those structural needs as well.
Yep, and it's only gotten worse with the pandemic. A lot of childcare,
Right.
Facilities closed down and haven't reopened in their full capacity. everything. Also, it's been harder for them to find people to come and work because they have the same problem with working moms and with, with people who aren't able to go back to work. So,
well, and I was reading a really interesting article. I can't remember. I'd have to dig up the link, but I think the average cost of childcare for one child in Virginia is $14,000 a year, but the average salary for a childcare worker is $22,000 a year. So when you think about how low those wages are, it's no wonder that it's been very difficult to recruit and retain good talent as well when you have higher paying jobs, when you're competing with higher paying jobs and other opportunities.
Yeah, we need to pay our staff better in these childcare facilities and in preschools because it's very, very difficult when they're not making a living wage. You're not going to get people who want to do those jobs, and you're not going to have the best and the brightest doing them. So yes, I think that valuing people more would be very beneficial. So absolutely. Thank you, Christina. Emily, what do you think some of the systemic or some of the unmet needs are that could possibly be helped by the expanded tax credit, and what do you think that would impact that would have on Virginia families?
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to be really important is that folks are able to help families navigate this new tax credit and the process that there's now going to be an advance payment and a way of providing this funding to families that's going to be a little bit different in the past. And that if we want to really fulfill the promise of reducing childhood poverty, we know that often some of the most disconnected and low and limited resource families are the families living in poverty. So we want to really take some intentional efforts to ensure that there is outreach to those families to understand how to claim the credit if they're not already receiving the credit, and that there's some intentional help for families to walk through the IRS systems to make it available to them. There's a non-filer system for any family that didn't have a tax liability this year or didn't file yet to file to receive the child tax credit payment. And there's systems to update your status that are available now or will be coming. Sometimes these systems, they're online systems. They can be hard to navigate. They require passwords and taking pictures of your driver's license and other pieces. Some parts of the instructions are translated, but some of the actual tools are not translated outside of English. And so some families are really going to need some specific hand-holding and help from folks that they trust in the community. That can be child care providers, that can be health workers, community health workers, home visitors, lots of folks that will likely be called on to help families, church volunteers, others. It's really going to take some intentional effort to not only get the word out, but to help families understand how to navigate the system and claim the credit. The payments will also be coming on a monthly basis between now and December. So that's going to be a little bit different way of receiving those benefits. And then they'll stop in January, and the rest of the payment will come in a lump sum. So understanding the timing and how folks will receive the credit will also be really helpful for folks to either plan in advance or to ensure that they're getting the payments that they were expecting.
Absolutely. That's such a good point, Emily, because it is really confusing. And sometimes you find that the people who would benefit most from these child tax credit payments, the advances, that they are unbanked or they are unable to receive wire transfers into their accounts, right? So if they don't have a checking account, they're not going to be able to get the IRS to just zap it into their account every month. So maybe they didn't have a tax liability, so they didn't do the form and maybe they still haven't gotten their stimulus checks for that very reason. So we need to make sure that we train up all kinds of organizations, faith-based organization, nonprofits. My office, I know, is ready here and ready to be a resource to help anybody who needs it. If you do have internet access and you go to irs.gov, it's very, very right there on the banner on the page that there's lots of information about it, and you can get lots of information. But you're absolutely right that we need to ensure that people who don't really necessarily aren't that sophisticated when it comes to a lot of the internet and also navigating government. Very good. So now we have a banner going across the bottom, irs.gov/child tax credit 2021 will take you exactly where you need to go. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily.
And I'll just add, because I was thinking about Loudoun and some of your broadband issues as well, that the portal is available to use on cell phones and mobile devices. It's actually maybe even a little bit easier on a mobile device than on a computer. So that's a positive for folks who are trying to get that internet access as well.
Yeah, it certainly is a lot easier for me to upload a picture of my driver's license and stuff like that from my phone than it is from a desktop computer, for sure. So yeah. Heather, do you have any thoughts on unmet needs and what some of the child tax credit advancements could do for them here in Loudoun County and in Virginia and beyond?
No.
All right, how about you?
No, a lot has been covered, and I couldn't agree more. Emily and Christina have been very knowledgeable on these matters.
Elizabeth, did you have anything you wanted to add?
One of the things that we haven't touched on quite a bit is mental health and accessibility to mental health, quality mental health care. And I know that a lot of students especially are going to have a hard time. I have experienced this trying to find mental health care, and the cost of mental health care is extremely high, and it's hard to find. And hopefully the tax credit will help people be able to afford quality mental health care. I think the kids being home, a lot of kids who were on distance learning, there's gonna be some issues going back to school, the socialization, all of that. And so I think that, that's one piece of this that will directly be helped from this child tax credit.
Yeah, and that is a huge unmet need, and that has been the case for many years, unfortunately. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, as you pointed out, it got way, way worse. So there's still so much to have to do in that area. So I think you're absolutely right. Hopefully that extra money would help.
Mm-hmm.
And as we look forward to the new school year, I think that's something that we're going to have to keep in mind as we see these kids going back to school in person. I think it's great that they're going back in person, but that's going to come with its own set of challenges. So wonderful. Well, now I think a lot of what I'm hearing here is that this is a great thing, but it would be even better if it were made permanent. So that's something I'm working on in Congress. I'm hoping that we'll be able to make it permanent. I mean, I think that this is, and it's something that lifts half of American kids out of poverty. Why wouldn't we want that to expand that? I mean, why wouldn't we want to make it permanent? We don't want these kids to be out of poverty for 1 year and then go right back into poverty in the next year. So as we move forward, we need to make sure that we fight to make the child tax credit advancement and expansion permanent. It will help lift many, many kids out of poverty and will help improve the standard of living for so many Americans, and also help our economy get stronger for everyone. So I think as we start to wrap up, I just want to know if anybody has any closing thoughts or anything that they want to share for the benefit of the audience at home about what the child tax credit means and what we can do to help in the meantime. Christina, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, just thank you for fighting for Virginia families, for Virginia women and families in Congress, and thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for doing this event today, because I think that there is some information that's circulating about the credit, but I think it's good to kind of get it all in one place here, and so I hope this has been a helpful session for those who've been able to follow along.
Great, thank you. And Emily, how about you? The voices.
Yeah, well, thank you again for hosting this and helping to get the word out. It's really on all of us, so thank you for taking the lead and showing how it's done, getting the word out about helping families to take advantage of the child tax credit.
Well, thank you all so much for joining me here today. This has been really informative. I'm so excited for this wonderful opportunity, and I think it's going to be hugely beneficial for families here in Virginia 10 and beyond. So, if you need any help claiming it, please let us know. We need to make sure that people are able to access it and that they understand where they can go. You can go to irs.gov/Child Tax Credit 2021 for all the information, or you can call my office at Congresswoman Wexton, or at wexton.house.gov for information as well. So we were happy to walk you through the process. Want to make sure you take full advantage of this wonderful opportunity, and hopefully we can make it permanent. So thank you all so much. Thanks for everything that you're doing for our community. Take care and stay well and stay safe.